Everybody, my name is Jacob Buoy, and today I'm going to be showing you my game Fort Cromwell in Tabletop Simulator. I'm going to be doing this in VR, but of course, if you have Tabletop Simulator and don't have VR, you can, of course, download the game and just play it through normal desktop mode. I just thought it'd be really cool to show it off in VR. Unfortunately, there is no way to, let me just, there's a bad glitch or an error or whatever, and I can't show you the game in native, so I have to just show you the headset mirror, which is why you're going to be seeing the two perspective. I'm sorry about that. Again, so in the video description, I'll leave a link to the workshop page if you have Tabletop Simulator, and you can download this game for yourself. So if you have a physical copy of Fort Cromwell, it looks very similar to this. The only difference is that there wasn't enough colored dyes, so in the real game there's actually different colors. And also, there was no bread or water in Tabletop Simulator, so that is indicated with this white and black dot. I'm going to give you a quick tutorial, actually. This sounds like fun. So, to set the game up, you give each player one of these player cards. There we go. My real-life desk is getting in the way, so it's getting a little tedious. There we go. So the player cards look like this. They're a lot better in real life. They just, I guess, look scaled down in virtual reality. This is the supply card. So each player gets one player card and one supply card, as well as one friend card. I'll give that player friend, give this player foe. They also get one friend, one foe that they keep hidden, or they keep face down in front of them. And then they get they get all three starter cards. Now, this is super tedious in VR, as I don't think there's a way to pick out cards. Oh, how lucky, we drew the starter flintlock. So each player gets a starter flintlock. A starter lights out. Wow, the luck. Now, can we get the starter medication? I'm just going to edit the video until I get to it, so I'll be back. Alright, I literally found it at the bottom of the deck. So, I'm just going to show you the different types of cards in the contraband deck, and I'll explain later how this comes into play, but while I have them out, I might as well explain them. So when you draw a contraband card, you have a chance of drawing one of these three that you get as your starter, as well as a resource card, which is just a one-time use, like you get it, and then you receive the food, and then you discard the card, as well as the nasty disease cards. These can only be cured by your medication, and they have negative effects. So that's why, like, if you're low on life, maybe you wouldn't want to draw out of the contraband card, because it's like a choice every day you get to draw out of the contraband deck. So once you give every player their three starters, you remove all the extra starters from the game, and you shuffle the deck without the starters. I kept them in here, but as I said, controlling the decks are really tedious in VR. Screw you, card. There we go. Awesome. So you give each player their friend or foe, give them your starter cards, and then you decide how long you want the game to be. This is done by going through the sentence deck, which looks like this, and choosing how many cards you want to play with. For your first game, I always recommend 20 cards, as this gives you a good 30-minute game, especially with a 3-player game. I'm not going to take it down to 20 cards because we're only going to be doing like 1 or 2 turns through this tutorial. And again, I have the rulebook on my website, buoygames.com. The rulebook is not included with the physical copy of the game currently because it adds way too much money, and it's just so much cheaper to just give people the option of downloading the PDF. And the physical copy is already $70 on Game Crafters. So I'm making this video to showcase the game in VR as well as to give you a tutorial on how to play, and the rulebook is on my website. So you've started the game. You've given all the players their food, their starter cards, their friend or foes. Now what you do is every player gets a life pawn, a water pawn. Sorry, the life pawn, the thirst pawn, and the hunger pawn. The way this works is that you don't want to go from here to here, because then you're out of the game. You lose life by getting hungry and thirsty. Once you're in the ×1 slot, you lose 1 life. So since in this instance we have the hunger and water at times 1, this player would lose 2 life. This is the times 3 and the times 1, this player would lose 4 life. And once they're from here and they go here, that player dies and is out of the game. So the goal of the game is to survive your sentence by going through your whole sentence deck. And this is done by going through the game's phases. At the end of each phase is a day, which is like a turn. So we've got our board set up. Every player has their cards. That we're going to start our game now. So a head prisoner is picked for the day. Once that head prisoner has done their day, the person to their right is the next head prisoner, and so on and so forth. The head prisoner has different perks, and I'll go over that. But the head prisoner's first job is to make sure every player does their attrition. This means at the beginning of each turn, including the first turn, they lose 1 thirst and 1 hunger. They also lose their food and water that gets stale and sour. Once you're so let's say you just get your food and your water and you keep it at the end of the day. The next day it would go to 2 days left, and once it goes from 1 day's left to off, you lose it and it's discarded from the game. Once this is done, the head prisoner draws the day's sentence card. Today there is overcrowding. Players decide if they will roll for water or food during the beg phase. That's not too good, but I'll go over what the beg phase is. Once we've drawn our sentence card, we've done our attrition, and players have died or they've lost their food, we go down to beg. Usually in the beg phase, players would roll the 2 beg dice. However, because of today's active effect, the players would now have to democratically decide if they're begging for food or water. You want water because if you don't drink after the first turn, you will lose a life. So these players decide to roll for water. And they rolled a 2. Not too bad. But if you may notice, this is a game of 3 players. Somebody is going without. This is where the game's main mechanic of friend or foe comes into play. The players decide how they will split it up democratically, if they were going to, and they must do this each turn. And then they play their card face down. If all the players play friend, then that democratic choice that they all came up with occurs. If one of them plays foe and the rest of them play friend, they then get everything. If everybody plays foe, where's the other foe? Here's a foe. So if everybody plays foe, then nobody gets anything and it's discarded. But let's say that we have an instance where 2 players play foe and 1 player plays friend. These 2 players fight for the resources. This means that they would shoot each other to get them and stuff like that. I'll go into that later. So in this instance, all the players are playing friend. And do I have a friend card for them? No, so just imagine this player played friend. They would split up their water equally. I guess this player was willing to go without. And then this is where the head prisoner gets their most power. They then get to choose to have free time or not. They can go to free time or they can go to supper. The reason why this is important is that bad stuff can happen to you during free time, and so the head prisoner for the day may want to just skip it and go right to supper, especially if they just stole food and water from their opponents during the beg phase. During free time, players are allowed to draw 1 contraband card. They don't have to. In this instance, I drew a 2 food, so I would discard it immediately and get my 2 food on my player card. This player drew a lights out. They would put it in their hand secretly. They wouldn't show it to the other players. And this player drew a flintlock, which they would put in their hand secretly. During free time is when you can trade resources and contraband cards from one another. You can cure other players' diseases with using the medication. You can shoot players with the flintlock, meaning that you say, I'm going to shoot this player. I'll play my contraband. I'll play my flintlock. If that player does not respond with a flintlock, then they lose a life. However, if they also play a flintlock, this becomes a duel. They roll their action dice, and whoever rolls the highest, this player rolled the highest, the opponent gets shot and loses a life. If they tie, they both lose a life. But by far the most powerful card during free time is the lights out card. I just had a lights out. Where is it? Oh, crap. There it is. Each player starts with the lights out, and there's only 2 other in the whole deck, so they're very rare. Once the player plays lights out, they must say, lights out. Once they do that, they can trade a card, a supply card, with another player's. This also immediately ends free time. So if you're about to die and an opponent has a lot of food and water, you can you can use the lights out to trade cards. Now this also gets players really mad at you. So I'm going to go through one more day. So at the beginning of the day, this player is now the head prisoner, and they make sure everyone takes attrition. Oh, I'm sorry, let me just explain supper. Supper's really easy. You just use your food and water to gain back thirst and hunger. You can't gain back more than you actually have, so you can only be at the maximum. So I drank this water, so I'm not going to... So at the beginning of the attrition the next day, I'm not going to lose a life. But however, my hunger is getting worse. This head prisoner would then play the day sentence card. Today is the guard's day off. Skip the beg phase. Man, this is just an unlucky 2 cards. So because I want to show you what happens during a fight during the beg phase, we're going to draw a different card. But that would have literally meant skip the beg phase, and we'd have to wait a whole other day. There we go, pay for the grog. Players must discard a contraband before the beg phase. So that means we all have to discard a contraband. Contraband are any of the starter cards you start with or that you draw. Since I've used my lights out and my flintlock already, I am going to just give up my medication. We now go to the beg phase. We roll the food and the water, a 2 and a 1. And I just want to show you what happens when multiple players play foe, but not every player. So let's say that these 2 players played foe, and I played friend. One of them can escalate it by playing a flintlock. If they do, their opponent can also play a flintlock. Then it becomes a duel. When I've explained how duels work, the winner of the duel gets the resources. If they tie, then they have another duel. If neither player has a flintlock at the tie, they have a fist fight. Going into the fight, if no one has a flintlock or no one uses a flintlock, they have a fist fight. The rules of a fist fight are the same as a duel, except ties just mean you roll again. You don't lose a life. That is pretty much the whole game. I strongly recommend, if you want to know how to play, to just download the rulebook. It goes into better detail than this. This video was mainly just to showcase how the game works in Tabletop Simulator's VR mode. And thanks for looking at my stuff. My name, again, is Jacob Buoy, and you can follow my path through game design. I'm currently a student on my website, buoygames.com. Thank you.